the rise of Democratic prospects in the midterm election. Labor Day is come and gone, and so have the prospects for a Republican landslide victory in the midterm elections. The GOP quest to take control of Congress did not go gently into the Labor Day weekend. Just before the holiday, Republicans lost special congressional elections in Alaska, goodbye Sarah Palin, and in upstate New York. And the GOP will have to win back those races if they hope to have a significant majority in the U.S. House of Representatives. The red wave has crested and turned into a rising blue tide. A recent national survey for the Wall Street Journal shows a 3-point Republican edge in March has turned into a 5-point Democratic advantage in a generic congressional trial heat. That poll was done just before Labor Day. Earlier this year, the contest for control of Congress was a walk in the park for the GOP. Now it's a street fight between both elections. And we will find out why from our next guest, Sarah Jones, the editor-in-chief of PoliticusUSA, who is also a star of stage, screen, and social media, and was once called scandalous trash by Rick Perry, the former failed governor of Texas. Rick Perry is irrelevant now, but fortunately Sarah isn't. Sarah, how are you doing today?
I'm really good. How about you?
Oh, fine. Let me run some numbers past you. The last time I checked 538.com, they had a Democrat probability of retaining control of the Senate at about 65%. Unfortunately, they also had the Republican probability of retaining control of the House also of gaining control of the House, also at 65%. What's your take?
Well, I do think the House is a different animal. I think that the Senate is looking much more optimistic than we originally thought for Democrats. The House, obviously, because of the gerrymandering issues with every state that Republicans have control over, that is a different situation. We're not seeing, you don't see quite the, we don't have the kind of democracy that we should have, where when public opinion changes, you see that. But then there's also like the districts that are the MAGA districts where people are going to turn out for those kind of candidates. So, but I still think that, I think it's interesting because a lot of these polls, and you know as a pollster yourself, they're on registered voters. We're seeing all of these new registrations after the Roe decision, and so it's going to be really interesting to see how that comes to be, how it comes manifest on Election Day. Do those people turn out? There's, history says that they usually do turn out when there's an increase in registration like that. So if they do, does that change what the pollsters, these are the same polls that thought that these people were telling us Roe wasn't going to matter. And it's been interesting to me listening to pundits say that, because I thought, you don't want to keep telling women that their basic ability to live doesn't matter to them, that they're not going to turn out. Even Republican women, some of them are going to turn out. They're going to vote to save their own lives and give their daughters freedom.
Yeah, just to underline the point you made, I saw a report on early registrations in Texas. In the new registrations, Democrats had a 10-point advantage over Republicans. Also, in the Wall Street Journal that I referred to, which showed that there's been a big uptick in the national Democratic vote in the generic trial heat, the biggest surge has been among women, independents, and young people. And I think that demonstrates the power of the Dobbs decision and how it has come back to bite the GOP in the behind. Also, I should say...
We have that here, too, in Pennsylvania. Sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know you were going to get to Pennsylvania. There's been a big change here with registration as well.
Okay.
With
Well,
women.
let me ask you this, Sarah. There has been clearly a Democratic surge in the midterm support, which Secretary Castro talked about in the clip, which I talked about in my opening rant. Why has there been an upsurge in Democratic support in the midterms? You talked about Dobbs. Is that it, or are there other things going on?
No, I think there's a lot going on that you did touch on a lot of this in your column, but gas prices have come down. Inflation is getting better. Biden's numbers are coming up a little bit. We've had a lot of good legislation, popular legislation that this president and the Democratic Congress has passed. And then we have superior candidates. At what the Republican, when you are a kind of criminal organization where you can't even stand up for our national security, you're going to attract the lowest of the low and the dregs. And we see that here in Pennsylvania when we have, Doug Mastriano, who is not only a QAnon person, but he's been given a lot of money to a white supremacist organization that was a place where the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter spent time, and their neo-Nazi types hang out there. So that's what they're appealing to. That isn't the majority of the country, and I think that's been a big turnoff. I'm calling this the Trump drag. I mean, as you talked about earlier, he's in the news constantly now. He's stolen, classified documents. He's dragging this court case out now, and that's not going to help Republicans. Now he's claiming, it's not classified. Well, I'm not going to say it's not classified, but, you prove it was classified, even though it said it was classified. It's the whole thing that they do where they make a case in the media, in the conservative media, and it comes through to mainstream media and bleeds through there. And these things get conflated, like his, non-existent executive privilege, they're conflating with attorney-client privilege. And the media not being, maybe they just want to take that stuff up. I'm not sure. It looks like some of them are really working hard to make the conservative case look legitimate, and it really isn't. It's just not a legitimate position.
No, it certainly isn't, and I think you're right. There are a number of factors driving the Democratic resurgence in the midterms. I think President Biden has managed to pass significant legislation that has been received positively by the American public. I think the ongoing Trump legal saga is just killing the GOP. I think Trump's trying to delay the proceedings as much as possible, but every day it's in the news is a bad day for the GOP. And as you can see, usually when they ask Mitch McConnell about the case, he has a more pronounced than usual grimace on his face. There's the decline in gasoline prices. And again, the Dobbs decision was, I think, when people write the histories of this midterm election, the story will start on June 23rd, the day the Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade. We're going to take a short break now. We'll be back with more of Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of PoliticusUSA, and more discussion about the midterm elections when we return. Don't go anywhere. We're going to let our radio audience go, but we'll be staying for our video audience, so please don't move your dial if you have a dial on
What
your
I know
laptop.
about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on. And
Yeah, how do I do that? Just go to turn off the camera?
In D.C. with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, who is the editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. By the way, Sarah's Twitter handle is Sarah, S-A-R-A-H, at POLITICUS USA. Oh, excuse me. It's Politicus Sarah, POLITICUS SARAH. Sarah is joining us today to talk about the midterm elections. Sarah, why don't you, we referred to it a little bit, but why don't you talk about the gubernatorial, since you're located and are very knowledgeable about Pennsylvania. Will you discuss, I want to discuss, first let's take the Senate race between John Fetterman and Dr. Oz. Could you tell our viewers something about the two candidates?
Well, Dr. Oz. John Fetterman is the lieutenant governor right now. He's running for Senate. He's been very popular with Democrats here, and he comes into the red districts here, which is how this state has been won by Democrats in previous elections. So he comes and makes his case to people, not just sticking to the cities. And he has a long history here of working to make things better in Pennsylvania. He's got a really good, he's just got this authentic kind of persona that really resonates with voters. And then you have Dr. Oz, who doesn't live here. He lives in New Jersey, and then just kind of bought a house so he could run here. And that house, he got busted using a tax break for farmers here that's going to cost the taxpayers in his area a lot of money. I think it's $50,000. So, you know, he's very elite. I don't really know even what he stands for other than Trump, and I don't think he knows. A lot of the voters here, the Trump voters, tell me that they don't trust him because they think he's a Democrat. So he's having a hard time even with Trump supporters. I'm just not seeing people turning out for Dr. Oz here. The person who might drive turnout here for that faction is Mastriano, who's running.
Well, we're going to go to a break now. Let's come back and talk about the gubernatorial race. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of Politicus.com. Sarah's Twitter handle, which I mangled before, is Politicus, POLITICUS, Sarah, SARAH. We'll be back with more Deadline DC right after we bring back our radio listeners. Welcome back to Deadline DC with Brad Bannon. Our guest in this half hour is Sarah Jones, who is the editor-in-chief of Politicus USA. Sarah, welcome back. We were talking about Pennsylvania politics when we went to the break. You've talked about Dr. Oz. Now, it seems to me the potential problem for Fetterman in this race is his health problems. He had a stroke before the primary. He's recovering from the stroke. Oz, who is a medical doctor, I guess, he purports to be anyway, has tried, and especially in the last week, made Fetterman's health an issue. Do you think Oz will be able to use concerns about Fetterman's health to get back into the race?
Well, I think that would have worked more effectively, but before Fetterman came back out. But he's been doing rallies. He just had a rally that had like 2,700 people in it, and then it had an overflow with over 300 people in it. So he's out there and people are seeing him. And I think that really just takes away Dr. Oz's whatever point. he's trying to make about his health. Of course, you know, that was an issue when it first happened. But I think now people are seeing him, and it's when you look at your choices here, there really isn't a choice. I mean, you'd rather have Fetterman with his stroke than have Dr. Oz, who's not even from here. And, you know, we still don't know. He's running on crudité specialties. He doesn't get the stores right here. He really just one bad mistake after another. It's just a gaffe machine, really. So I don't think it's going to impact, you know, and right now Fetterman is up by 8 here and Shapiro's up by 7. Of course, it's all about turnout. But one of the things that I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Rovember, sort of, is that here in Pennsylvania there has been this change with the registered voters, and they're new registered voters, and I think it was 56% of the new registrations in the state are from women, and those are overwhelmingly Democrats and younger people, and 62% of the women were registered Democrats and 15% were registered Republicans. So that is some good news there.
Okay. Now, Fetterman, it seems to me the Dobbs decision where they overturned Roe versus Wade, and Pennsylvania is a pro-choice state. I checked the exit polls from 2020, and basically it is the voters, the people who voted in the presidential election were very pro-choice in 2020. How does Oz defend his position on the Dobbs decision? I presume he supports it. How does he respond to that when people accuse him of making it possible, creating a world where women can't have abortions if they choose?
So I think, you know, that's the problem. That's one of the many problems for him. And when I talked about him not having a stance on the issues, he's kind of generic Republican, taking all their extreme views, but he doesn't seem to really subscribe to them. So it's, you know, yeah, he's gonna push for having no choice here. Fetterman is making this huge issue, and he has from the beginning, before Roe was overturned. He always said that he was going to push for, you know, women should always have a choice. And so Fetterman just had that rally, Women for Fetterman, and he said, should this decision be made by Dr. Oz? You know, and Fetterman said it should be left to a woman and a real doctor. Well, you know, kind of a dig at Dr. Oz because he's gotten in trouble selling kind of scammy weight loss products in the past. So he doesn't really have an answer. And I don't think, I mean, like most Republicans, if they're not in a MAGA area, he doesn't want to talk about that. What can they talk about right now? They can't talk about national security. They can't talk about abortion. They can't talk about law and order without being laughed out of the room if there's anyone sane. So really, I think this is coming down to not even to what a candidate stands for, but it's whittled down to this kind of cult on the Republican side. Okay.
Well, let's switch to the governor's race. Who are the two candidates for governor in Pennsylvania?
So there's Doug Mastriano, who is a QAnon extremist, and Josh Shapiro, who is our current attorney general. Josh Shapiro is leading by 7 right now. Doug Mastriano, I've talked about this before, but he was at the Capitol. He brought, I think he brought a bus of people there. He crossed the police barrier. He is everything Trump is, and then times 10. And he has promised to, if he wins, to install a Secretary of State who will, basically, he will just tell this person who wins elections. So he is extremely troubling, and I think I mentioned earlier, hangs out on that, or is paying that, and hasn't shied away from it, even after he was called out, the white supremacist, QAnon, neo-Nazi kind of group that he's paying for followers and I don't know, support, I guess. So he's a very troubling person. I don't know. It seems like he should be talking to the FBI and the DOJ about what he did on January 6th instead of running for office, but that's where we're at. There's so many Republicans right now running for office in very troubling positions. A lot of them running for Secretary of State and other positions where they would have control.
Okay.
To just dictate.
Well, let me ask you a question. I believe I've read, and maybe I read it in one of your columns actually, that several Republican officials across Pennsylvania have endorsed the candidate, the Democratic candidate for governor. Is that true, and why?
Yes. Well, law enforcement. Shapiro, he has a support of moderates and Democrats, so he's very popular. He has spent years building that support, and he is our attorney general right now. He is a very good attorney general. He follows the law, and law enforcement seems to be behind that. It's surprising. I'm sure we have law enforcement that aren't, because you can see that kind of crossover that's going on with them right now, and QAnon and the Republican Party. But so far, they've endorsed Josh Shapiro here, and I'm glad for it, because again, we are in danger with Mastriano. He makes Trump look like a sane, law-abiding citizen.
Oh my God, is that possible?
Well, if it is possible, Doug Mastriano has done it. He's the guy. If anyone can do that, it's him.
Okay. Let me ask you another, question. Let's assume both Fetterman and Shapiro win. I hope they do, and hopefully they will. Do you think, if that happens, if Democrats win the governor's and the Senate race there, is that going to prompt Republicans to think about the candidates that win their primaries and find a way to nominate less extreme candidates who might actually have a chance to win? Or is the Republican Party hopelessly enthralled with Trump?
That's a great question, and I think my answer to that has been the same for the last 6 years. I don't see them really. Everyone's been talking forever. Oh, they had to come to Jesus. Oh, no, they haven't. They haven't, because they keep grabbing power. As long as they can grab power and get away with it, they're not going to have a come to Jesus. They're not going to do, any kind of look at their party and try to change things. And the media lets them get away with a lot of this so far. So I don't see. Of course they want, you see Mitch McConnell, he knows what's going on. He knows that they can't have these kind of candidates, but what control do they have? They can't keep feeding this beast, which they started feeding with the Tea Party. So everyone who says this is new, it's not new. And Trump is is a consequence of their beliefs, not the problem. The problem goes on, even without Trump. And then we have DeSantis. So I don't see them until they lose power and are humiliated on a national scale that I'm not sure our media is capable of. If that happens, then they're going to maybe regroup.
Well, we'll see, and it's a little less than 60 days now, so we will find out. I want to thank Sarah Jones, editor-in-chief of PoliticusUSA, for joining us to discuss the midterm elections. I also want to thank Paul Lisnick, the legal analyst from WGN-TV in Chicago, who joined us to discuss Trump's mounting legal problems. Also want to recognize our crack executive producer, Mark Grimaldi, who makes this all possible. We'll be back next Monday with more of